Action cameras are amazing in bright daylight, fast-paced situations. We all know this, but that's not why I'm here today. We're gonna take that idea and flip it on top of its head. We're gonna take our Insta360 Go2 and see if action cameras can stand up to things like my Canon M50 or my smartphone, and we're gonna start adding some actual lighting to this device and see what the image looks like. Is the Insta360 Go2 and other action cameras usable for talking head videos? Let's find out. So how are we gonna run this test? I'm gonna do 2 shots on each camera. My Canon M50, which I'm filming on right now, 2 shots on the Insta360 Go2, and then 2 more on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. One with fluorescent lighting just from my room, and then the next will be using my newer NL660 LED bicolor light. With each of these, we're gonna compare each shot and see how the low light performance is and how it all just stacks up to my Canon M50, which I'm using right now. All right. Okay. So now that we're actually filming on the Insta360 Go2, we're using my light at the current moment, but we're filming audio with my Canon M50 using a wireless lavalier system. If I switch over to it, you can see the Go2 within frame right there. But I'm gonna switch over to the audio on the Go2 momentarily when we do our comparisons, but I wanted to list some of the limitations that I have when filming with a camera like this, specifically the Go2. The first limitation we run into, especially with the Go2, is record time. This device has a 30-minute cap on recording, and it overheats after a certain amount of time, which it warns you about within the app. It's not recommended to film over 10 minutes, I believe, when you're filming in the Pro Video mode, which I'm currently using. And that's in optimal airflow conditions. I'm in a stagnant room right now without any airflow. When you're outside moving around, there's air passing over the camera and helping it cool. It's such a small device that it heats up pretty quickly. So you want to be very vigilant of that because it might shut down in the middle of recording. It's happened to me before. It happens with other action cameras. I've had it happen with a GoPro. I was trying to film a wedding and it just turned off in the middle of it. Happens. Got to be careful and wary about that. But also, I can't add an SD card like I can my Canon M50, so I'm stuck with the internal 32 gigabytes that's directly on board the Insta360 Go2. They have a 64 gigabyte version, but I have yet to purchase one. I love this camera and I plan on getting a second one, but it's also a limitation not being able to record all that footage. I would like to have 128 gigs at least, or the option to add an SD card or some converter where I can film more. The second limitation I run into when using something like the Go2 would have to be the smaller sensor. This is really limiting in low light situations. When you're filming indoors, you need a lot of external light like I'm using right now. When I switch over to the fluorescent light, I think you're gonna see a big difference. It's gonna be a lot grainier and there'll be a lot more compression that's noticeable. I think that it looks really compressed to begin with, and that has to do with the smaller sensor, and it shoots at such a high aperture, everything's in focus, so you can't get really a nice depth of field. That's one of the problems with having a smaller sensor on a camera like this, and that's not just for the Go2, that goes for GoPros and other action cameras as well. Having a wide field of view is awesome and you can crop in always, but you lose a lot of detail when you crop in so much. My third problem would have to be overheating just in general. I kind of mentioned that when I was talking about record limit, but these cameras do overheat if they're not in optimal conditions. I've had it happen with a GoPro. I've had it happen with my Go2. I've seen it happen with my buddy's 360 camera. It'll happen. It happens with DSLRs and M50s and cell phones and things like that. But it seems to happen a lot more with these smaller action cameras due to the lack of airflow that you're able to have with inside. That's the 3 biggest hindrances when filming with an action camera, specifically the Go2 that I've run into. But let's check out some of these comparisons so we can see how it looks. Right now we're using the Canon M50 being my best camera with the biggest sensor. We're gonna use this as the baseline to compare to the Go2 and my iPhone 13. Right now in this first shot, we are using the newer NL660 bicolor LED panel. We'll switch over to fluorescent lighting in just a moment, but remember, we are using this shot and the next shot as comparisons compared to the iPhone and the Go2. This is how the Canon M50 looks with fluorescent lighting. I'm using a 1/50th shutter speed f4 ISO 400, exact same settings as the last shot, but I'm not using the newer NL660 bicolor LED panel. Let's switch over to our next camera and see how it looks. We're now filming on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm gonna switch over to fluorescent lighting in a moment, but we're currently using the newer NL660. How does it look? Now we're using fluorescent room lighting with my iPhone 13 Pro Max. we're using the broken lamp that I showed earlier. How does it look? So I was just using the Go2 and it crashed and froze on me. It is burning hot, and that is one of the things I was talking about. I just had to film 2 retakes and I was able to get 15 minutes of footage, but it also crapped out on me and it's not connecting back with my phone, so I'm gonna have to wait a few minutes to let this cool down and finish out the rest of the testing. So I'm about to film the test shot with the Go2, but it's still overheated. I'm gonna show you one of my quick tips, and I would not recommend trying this at home. If you do, I'm not responsible for any broken Go2s, but I haven't found any problems, especially with the camera being waterproof. I'm just gonna pop it in my mini fridge real quick. I have a nice little shelf up top here. Make sure that it's all dry. And we'll check on that in just a minute, as long as I don't trip on anything. So now that we're back and we have the Insta360 Go2 up and running, I put it in my freezer for a few minutes and now it's back working just good as new. Currently using the onboard microphone, and we are using the newer NL66 bicolor LED panel. How does it look? Now we're gonna switch over to fluorescent light, and then when we're done, we're gonna compare all of these clips really quick together. Now we're using fluorescent lighting with the Go2. How does it look comparative to when I was using my newer NL660? We're gonna comparatively bring together all the clips in just a moment, and then try to answer the question, can you use an action camera, specifically the Go2, for filming talking head videos? Our first test is the M50 versus the iPhone 13 with the LED panel. I really like the look of the M50. It has nice dramatic lighting because the settings are fixed, while the iPhone uses computational AI to keep everything exposed and have a nice sharp image, but I overall like the M50 better in this, but the iPhone is absolutely usable for talking head videos. Now looking at fluorescent or room lighting, you can see the M50 starts to fall apart, the image looks a little flatter, there's not as much depth. While the iPhone, same thing, it's a little flatter, but everything is exposed properly and it still looks like a nice bright image. I would take the iPhone image over the M50 in this certain circumstance. With that being said, we're going to keep the M50 as our baseline, and in the next test we're using the Go2 with the newer LED panel. And you can really see how the image is really compressed and very flat from the Go2. That smaller sensor and shooting at a very high aperture keeps everything in focus, while the M50 has a subtle blur and a look that I would prefer over the brighter but flatter Go2. Now when using fluorescent lighting like in this test, the actual Go2 seems to come together a little bit more when it's warmer, but I still like the look of the M50 better, being able to capture more depth within the entire image itself. The Go2 is absolutely usable for talking head. Out of all these cameras, the Canon M50 is the winner, but it doesn't mean an action camera can't do the job. Action cameras like the Insta360 Go2 will always have a place in my camera bag, but always for those unique shots. I'm Brad G Media signing out. I hope you all have a blessed day. I sure know I am. Subscribe for more content, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.